So we were talking about family dynamics and family relationships. So how can sort of depression, anxiety often sort of impact on those sort of relationships?
Yeah, well, depression and anxiety both impact on relationships very significantly sometimes, and that of course can impact on the caring relationship as well. Let's take depression first of all.
Okay.
One of the key distinctive aspects of depression is obviously low mood. The person feels sad and they're pessimistic. But that leads to what we call immobilization. The person doesn't want to do anything or go anywhere. The mind is kind of protecting them from potential threats or more disappointments by just closing things down. Now this won't be everyone, but many depressed people want to stay in the couch, stay at home, draw the curtains, do nothing. That's where they are. Now,
staying in bed a lot
longer if they can, absolutely. Which creates this vicious circle around I am depressed, I'm not doing anything, oh look, I haven't done anything today, I'm not a good person, this is not going to stop, I feel bad about things. Next morning, I'm going to stay in bed a bit longer, nothing gets done. So inactivity, immobilization, lower self-esteem, low energy levels that drive the immobility, and then the immobility itself just reduces the motivation to be active. So that's, there's a spectrum there, but that's the basic one.
Okay.
Now, you can imagine if, let's say it's a husband who's suffering from depression, and the wife is keen to go and visit the grandchildren. And he said, no, I don't want to. And she's saying, but you could cheer you up. Nope, I'm staying at home, I just can't face it. I can't face being nice to people. I can't face being jolly, and I don't want to upset the children. Now, there's an interesting tension there between wanting to care for the person, to respect their mood, to respect a choice they've made about not going out to a social occasion on the one hand, and on the other hand, just recognising that actually the depressed person will very often significantly underestimate how much enjoyment they will get from a social gathering.
Okay.
And if you can't get them to go, they will almost always, not always, but almost always say, actually, you know what, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the
and cutting off from friends, and so that could be one of those.
Yeah.
If someone's not seen anyone for a while, goes, oh, why don't you catch up with so and so? Why don't you go and visit them?
Oh, absolutely.
And coming up with reasons why I'm not really feeling it today, or I'll do it another time.
Yeah, it's something which we often talk about trying to find the opportunity when caring for depressed individuals. They will not on every occasion say, no, I don't want to go out, I don't want to do it, I don't want to meet friends. They will sometimes say, well, maybe we could do it tomorrow.
Okay.
You say, okay, fine, we'll do it tomorrow. What time tomorrow then? Build on that, try and get them out of the house, try and get them to do activities.
So more of a soft no than a hard no.
Oh,
not
absolutely.
like I'm not doing it. So I will do it, but just not today.
Exactly. In terms of anxiety, someone suffering from anxiety, we did mention earlier that anxiety and depression go together, but just focusing on anxiety for the moment. The person who's suffering from anxiety will be worried about what could go wrong, right? They'll worry about whether or not they can act in a confident way. Maybe there's a degree of procrastination there. They might be worried about whether they might say the wrong thing. And the recurrent mantra is, what if? What if we go to visit your sister and she's got friends round already? What if she's kind of busy? Oh, we shouldn't do that sort of thing. So constantly ruminating about what could go wrong is a characteristic, and that can impact on relationships as well. The anxious person will also sometimes kind of move towards making an agreement to do a certain thing, but as it comes near the time, sort of cycle back from that.
Okay.
This is the kind of approach avoidance conflict. They might like the idea of going to the theatre one evening, but as it gets closer, they get anxious about, will I have a panic attack in the theatre? Will people be looking at my clothing? What if I wear the wrong thing? Things which maybe 3 weeks previously were not on their mind, as they get closer to the event.
And how do you pick that up as a carer? Would they often verbalise it, or would they just just seem less interested or
I think every person with anxiety is different.
okay.
But the things to look out for are if they go quiet,
Okay.
it's not because they are turning down the reflection and the thinking. An anxious person is almost always ruminating about what could happen, what could go wrong, what can I possibly do, what will I do if this happens. So you do want to give the individual time to reflect on their own, but if you can keep the channels of communication open so that any anxieties or concerns that they've got, there's an easy channel back to you to open them up. But as a general rule in relationships, the more the communication channels are open,
Yeah.
the easier it makes everything. I suppose.
And as a carer, I suppose it can. One of the things that can really help is encouraging people just to talk about what they're thinking. If they're being very quiet, just say,
absolutely.
"Well, look, is
Yeah.
something bothering?
Yeah.
Is something you want to talk
Yeah.
about?" So
Mhm.
that that there's kind of a role that you can play in kind of helping
Yeah.
them to talk things out.
Absolutely. Often the impact on the relationship is linked to a reduction in a desire for activities in general, including joint activities, including family activities, and also about the kind of the way these things are done, about the constant checking and constant uncertainty about whether it is something they want to do, which can be disruptive to planning or anything else. One of the key things I think is in either depression or anxiety to get that balance right between validating the person's sense of what they think they want to do, but equally helping them reflect upon whether their assumptions about that situation are true or not. So if the depressed person says, I don't want to go and visit the grandchildren, I might upset them. You say, well, what makes you say that? Why do you think that exactly? And they might say, well, I don't know, I've just got a feeling maybe I'm going to be miserable and the kids will pick up on it and it'll be disruptive. They say, but there was that time previously when you went to your best and the kids were still delighted to see you.
And they had a really lovely time.
Had a
and
lovely
you really
time.
enjoyed it.
Exactly. Now this comes back to this idea of if you're a carer, your role is as a carer, a loving carer perhaps, but not a counsellor.
Mm-hmm.
However, the process of recovery and improvement really hinges on the kinds of conversations the individual has with themselves, but also with the people around them that they care about. So you're half in and half out of the therapeutic activity. And as I say, the thing that is really powerful in understanding where the light at the end of the tunnel is to recognise that for the person who's not at their best, they have a sense of an event is here, maybe in the past or in the future, and it created an emotional reaction in them. However, that's actually an optical illusion in a way, it's a psychological illusion. What really is going on is the situation happened or is about to happen or is anticipated to happen, and it triggers a set of complicated thoughts, often biased thoughts, often pessimistic thoughts, often thoughts that are informed by a whole range of threats and scenarios that are really unlikely to happen, a sense of thoughts to do with themselves being inadequate or lacking
a burden
power.
on others.
A burden on others,
yeah.
yes. Or I'm not going to go to the grandchildren. So the event is, we could go to the grandchildren. Emotional reaction, oh my gosh, that would be awful. The thought in between is, I am a burden with children if I am depressed, which can be challenging. And a therapist will explore and unpack these assumptions, help the person recognise that as soon as they hear an invitation about a family event, it immediately triggers a whole set of thoughts, biased thoughts, thoughts based on limited evidence, and that fuels the emotional reaction. So it's understanding that between an event and the emotion sits the very powerful thinking techniques that our brain has to help us. It's trying to protect us, but in the long run it can be quite damaging. So the key thing is to try and make sure that the individual recognises that many activities that they would think are not going to be happy for them or for others actually will be much better than they think they will be. And the only way to demonstrate that is to encourage and support them to actually take the risk and go and see the grandchildren, go to the theatre, and then think back and say, well, that wasn't so bad, was it? No, it wasn't.
And I like the distinction you made about saying that the carer, although you may not, you're not the counsellor or the therapist, you're not in charge of guiding the journey or guiding the therapeutic relationship. You can be having a really important role in supporting people through it.
Oh, absolutely.
So if they come back and go, actually, the next time you're feeling anxious or depressed about an event, here are some things that you might do. It gives you as a carer a really helpful role.
It does.
Because you're there, in many cases, many hours a day, many days a week with that person and trying to help support them through that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a great point about, if you can, try and go along to the session with the GP. I would entirely endorse that, and also take it further, that when the individual does get access to counselling or psychotherapy, be it through the NHS, those is a waiting list, or through a charity, or if they are able to afford it, going to a private therapist, if the carer can get along to one or two of the sessions, the counsellor will really welcome that, and the individual hopefully would welcome it too, because one of the things the therapist will do is negotiate with the client a plan for development and recovery, and there'll be specific bits of that the carer can be really actively involved in. I'll just give a quick example. Yeah. One of the things which most therapists would do for someone suffering depression or anxiety is to ask them to keep a log of their activities throughout the week, maybe on a morning, afternoon, evening basis, or even on an hourly basis or 2 hourly block, just to write down as it's happening what you were doing, and then below it what your mood was like, to try and track the patterns. Because often a depressed or anxious person, when you ask them to reflect upon the past week or the past 2 weeks, kind of remember the bad stuff and forget the neutral stuff.
The whole week was really,
the whole week
really
was
bad,
awful,
but
But when you've got it on paper. So, if you're a helper, one of the things you can do is to remind the person to fill in their logbook, to say to them periodically, so what did today and yesterday look like then? To reinforce that notion that actually, although you're not feeling well, and I totally understand that, and I really, really feel for you, and it must be awful what you're going through, it's not awful every hour of every day. There are reasons to believe that some of the things you do make you feel better than some of the other things you do. And in particular for a depressed person, look, you are better, you feel more in charge, you feel more optimistic if you're out doing something, anything active. This is one of the key things from as a cognitive behavioural therapist, which I think is important for carers and for sufferers to be aware of. Most of the time now, the NHS will always recommend CBT for depression or anxiety. It is the treatment of choice alongside medication. There are other forms of therapy, and they do a great job, but for the majority of people suffering from depression or anxiety, it is cognitive behavioural therapy. As I say, the idea there is to help people understand the thinking that sits between the event and the emotion. Now, the point is this. Cognitive behavioural therapy is very, very much based on the way things are now and how we can help you get better in the future. So that anxiety that many people have, that going to a psychotherapist because it's going to drag up stuff about, how I got on with my mum and the past, and what I did when I was a kid, and when I was in year 5, a guy said something. As important as those things can be, frankly, it's about where you are now. Because one of the key things is, and this is where carers can really be alert to how valuable they can be. It kind of, at the end of the day, it's not so much about what caused you to be depressed or what caused you to be anxious. It's about what is maintaining your depression and what is maintaining your anxiety. The things that are maintaining the depression is essentially about the lack of activity and the ways of thinking about yourself and thinking about what would happen if you were to be active. For anxiety, it's about the constant checking, the constant doubting, the constant exploring and chasing what ifs. That is what's maintaining the anxiety. So the carer can be positive about the fact that this is not about trying to help the individual understand the relationship they had with their father 40 years ago. As important as that might be in some context, the carer is live here and now to focus on helping the individual going forward, because that will be the counsellor's focus too. So, first point there is when you go to see a psychotherapist, they're not that interested in having you talk about your early childhood, not nowadays. Secondly, what they do want to do is say, right, where are you now? What do you want to do? what would count as a successful outcome from counselling for you, what assets do you have right now, such as relationships and networks, where do you want to be. Let's think about how you're thinking about these things. Let's think about the behavioural patterns that are helping you and the behavioural patterns that are not helping you. And the carer can be a really powerful asset in helping that individual go through that journey with the counsellor, because the focus is on the future and the carer is there for the person.
And I think it also really helps the carer feeling that they have some role or there's something to do, because they can feel very helpless if they know that this person is going through something. Think, well, I'm not a professional, like, you know, I'm not sure, I might say the wrong thing, or anxiety. And you were talking about journaling. One thing that I've come across a few times is co-journaling.
Oh yeah.
Where that actually the individual themselves can keep a journal, but actually the carer can keep a journal. So actually, from my point of view, Wednesday looked like quite a good day. There was quite a nice thing that happened, or you know, or you seemed very low in the morning, and that can it can help them feel kind of part of that journey towards.
Absolutely. And I know that when I go around the country doing workshops and helping people develop their own skills as therapists, I do see patterns now of more and more carers becoming involved in the support work for an individual person suffering from depression or anxiety, and the counsellor helps by giving homework. This is very common in therapy now. Giving homework might be a little questionnaire to fill in, it might be journaling, it might be mindful meditation, whatever it is. But more and more now I'm hearing about carers getting involved in the same activity. So I mean, I always ask my clients to do a particular form of guided meditation, and I do encourage them, if it's appropriate, for their carer, their partner, anyone they want, to do it with them. Because then it becomes a point of conversation. It demystifies it. It makes it feel something which is something you can look forward to, doing it together. And I believe everyone should be doing meditation anyway. But it's a good example of how more and more now carers are seen as being an important part of the dynamic around recovery. And that's a good thing.
I hope you found this course helpful. At FCC, we're committed to providing courses and training for unpaid carers, and these courses are completely free. If you found this helpful, you could support our work in 3 ways. Please recommend it to any friends or people that you know that will benefit from the courses. Please consider sharing it on social media. And if you can, please consider donating. There are buttons on the website where you can donate £1, £2, £5, and every pound that you donate will make a huge difference by helping us make more and more care courses completely free to carers. Thank you very much.